The kingdom of Elarion had once been a place where morning light touched the walls of silver towers and spread hope across the land, but years of merciless rule had turned its golden heart cold. Under the tyrant King Uldric, villages burned, rebellions were crushed, and silence became the only shield people had. At the center of this terror stood General Kael Draven, the king's infamous right hand, his executioner, his weapon, his beast. Kael was known across the realm as a storm given flesh. His armor never shined because it was always scarred. His voice carried the weight of death. Children whispered his name at night to scare each other, and entire towns emptied at the mere rumor of his arrival. But for all his brutality, Kael was loyal. He believed he was protecting the kingdom by destroying its enemies. He believed the king's commands were law. He believed power was the only truth. That illusion finally shattered the day Queen Seraphina rose against her own husband. Seraphina, beloved by the people, soft-spoken, wise, had spent years gathering proof of the atrocities committed under Aldric's rule, many of them ordered by the king but carried out by Kael. She had watched the kingdom bleed. She had heard the cries Aldric refused to hear. Where the king saw rebels, she saw starving families. Where he saw threats, she saw pleas for mercy. Quietly, carefully, she built a case powerful enough to topple a tyrant. And Kael, for the first time in his life, became prey instead of predator. When he was dragged in chains into the throne hall, Kael looked almost the same as always. Tall, unbroken, fearsome, but something in his eyes trembled when he saw the pile of evidence at Seraphina's feet. Reports of slaughtered prisoners, abandoned villages, burned crops, memory orbs filled with the screams of people who begged for mercy, signed orders, maps marked with destruction, things Kael had done without blinking, believing they were necessary. Seraphina dismissed the guards and stepped toward him. There was no hatred in her eyes, no triumph, only sorrow. General Kael Draven, do you know why you are standing here today? Kael clenched his jaw. Because you betrayed the king. Her answer was calm, but sharp as a blade. The king betrayed this kingdom long before I did. Kael expected execution, torture, anything but what she said next. She offered him a choice, a public trial, one that would end in certain death, condemned by the very people he once terrorized, or something none of the advisors approved, a chance at redemption. He would join her new peace army not as a commander or hero, but as a simple foot soldier. He would serve the people he had hurt. He would rebuild what he had destroyed. He would learn humility, compassion, and discipline from the lowest rank. And if he ever failed, she would personally see that justice was done. Kael stared at her in disbelief. She wasn't showing mercy. She was handing him a mountain to carry. For the first time in childhood, he felt small. And so, with no pride left to cling to, he chose the path he never imagined making: redemption. Life as a foot soldier was a humiliation Kael had never known. He woke before sunrise, shared cramped barracks with boys barely old enough to hold swords, cleaned stables, scrubbed floors, and took orders from captains who once bowed to him. When he walked through training grounds, soldiers whispered, glared, or turned their backs at him. Some spat near his boots, others mocked him openly. The beast general shoveling manure, they laughed. But Kael said nothing, not because he was humble, because inside him, for the first time, something was crumbling, an awareness of the pain he had caused. The faces of those he killed haunted him at night. The silence of the people wounded him more than any arrow ever could. Seraphina watched from afar. Not once did she intervene, not once did she offer kindness. She let the world's truth reshape him. Weeks passed and Kael completed every task without complaint. His muscles ached, but the ache felt cleaner than battle wounds. One evening while wandering near the training grounds, he heard soft crying from an alley. A young girl sat alone, clutching a broken wooden toy. When she saw him, she flinched. Everyone knew who he was. But instead of roaring or walking away, Kael knelt slowly. He asked what happened. The girl hesitated, then whispered that some soldiers broke her toy because her brother had died in one of Kael's battles. The words hit him harder than any spear. Kael took out his combat knife, gathered scraps of wood, and carved a small fox. He had never carved anything gentle before. When he handed it to her, she whispered, "Thank you, General." And Kael replied quietly, "Just Kael." That night, something shifted inside him, a small light in a place long dark. Seraphina summoned him days later. They walked through the palace gardens, a place Kael had never been allowed before. The flowers swayed in the breeze as she told him she had seen the change in him. He didn't argue, he didn't deny it. He only said, "I don't deserve forgiveness." Seraphina answered softly, "Forgiveness isn't the point. Growth is." For the first time, Kael looked at her not as a ruler or enemy, but as someone trying to save a kingdom, and maybe him. The night everything changed came without warning. A group loyal to the former king infiltrated the palace. Their mission was simple: kill Seraphina and restore the old reign of blood and power. As alarms blasted, Kael ran faster than he had ever run in war. When he reached her chamber, assassins surrounded her. Without thinking, Kael launched himself into the fight. He fought with not brutality, but with intention. He shielded her body with his own, took cuts across his arms, and dispatched the attackers one by one. When the final assassin fell, Seraphina stared at him in disbelief. "You protected me," she whispered. Kael, breathing heavily, said only, "I gave you a second life. I'm not letting anyone take it." After that night, everything shifted. Soldiers began to treat him with cautious respect. Children waved instead of hiding. Villagers thanked him. Slowly, painfully, Kael became someone the kingdom no longer feared. And Seraphina saw him, truly saw him, as not a beast, but a man breaking himself open to rebuild differently. Months later, she stood before the kingdom and promoted him, not back to general, not to commander, but to guardian of the Peace Legion, a rank built not on power, but on responsibility. Kael stood in simple armor and addressed the crowd. "Redemption is not a gift. It is a road, a long one, a hard one. I walk it because a queen believed I still could." Seraphina placed a hand on his shoulder. "Not just because I believed," she said, "because you chose to." Kael bowed his head as the crowd watched a man who once destroyed the kingdom now dedicate his entire life to protecting it. He was no longer the beast forged by a tyrant. He was no longer the shadow of war. He was Kael Draven, guardian of a future built on peace. And for the first time in his life, he finally felt worthy of the air he breathed.